You were a social media darling again this week for our Tony Khan coverage, and he disagrees with you. I mean that much has been made clear about your take on the current product, which you got to listen to. It's not like this guy only gets 600,000 viewers every Wednesday, um, but you have to say that, right?
This
Right.
is a guy. This is a guy hitting social media. You know, I'm telling you right now, my wife is not fat, and she's like 235. Like, dude, your wife's fat. Okay, your product sucks. It's just because obviously, like when you're the laughing stock of the NFL and the wrestling world in the same week, I really don't think that your opinion probably.
You've got to stand by your man, but I would privately be having discussions with my team, with my creative team, about what's wrong. And maybe I publicly have to go out and do like what he's doing. But any criticism that, me anyway, I always look for a shred of truth in criticism because maybe
Okay,
there's a message for me.
I'm the coach of the Golden State Warriors, and we get knocked out. Steve Kerr goes up to the podium and he says, hey, I need to do a better job. He never puts it on his players. But he also doesn't sit there and tell them that they're the best team in the league when they just got eliminated from the playoffs. Obviously, they're not. They were the 10th team in and the first team out. So obviously, your team isn't the best team. Therefore, that's why you take the blame. Obviously, you're not doing a good enough job at what you do because, from what I've heard, he doesn't delegate. And people like Jericho just do their own thing.
So, okay, so, right. So keep your basketball analogy for a minute. But what do you do in the locker room? But that's how you handle it in the press. But now you have your team. You don't have to be polite. What are you saying? You have to be critical, right? You got to lay
If you
into to
know,
people who are. Hmm? Oh, if you
if
know
you
what's wrong.
if you no, if you know, if you don't know the game of basketball, you can't say, hey, we need to pick up the pressure. We need to switch. We need to talk on defense. We need to move the ball. You have to know the game in order to sit back and watch tape and go, okay, boy, they really, we're not blocking out. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. And if you don't know the game, you can't walk into the locker room and tell them anything. He had a hard collar on at the beginning, like the one that you actually would have if you
Yeah.
had a serious, and he realized that fucking thing is painful as hell. So he switched to the Seinfeld episode of the I have a bad neck, and he took the heat for that.
The purpose of those collars is to incapacitate the head, correct? So that
It's supposed to,
there's
yeah. It's at this point, but my whole thing has been like I don't want to pound, I don't want to pile on because at this point in my life, I feel like if I have any more judgment or say I've said what I have to say, I don't want to come across as a bully, which I think I would be if I continually said that he would. So I just hope that he gets some help, that somebody like gives him some help.
is this a Dixie Carter situation? You could draw some parallels there.
No, Dixie never.
I meant with not knowing the sport that you're coaching and maybe
Dixie was
having a father's money involved.
completely different.
Tell me how.
Dixie was smart enough to put people in charge that knew, and she was a quick learn. She also knew what she liked. I mean, she had an eye for it.
Okay, so and that is kind of the what you'd be expected to do as an owner who might not be entirely familiar with the product, right? You know how to run a business, but like you're Nabisco, right?
Ford.
Ford.
I'm just saying,
So what you do is you
it's
take the people from Ford and you say, listen,
right.
you guys are still running this. We're going to get together and talk about the business aspect, but on the floor, it's still you guys
Yeah.
at
Yeah, they're
AEW.
not, the assembly line is not running smoothly.
Understood?
But so going back to AEW and going back to what I said, about the physiques, you know, when I watched to go for, for the main event to work with Cody in France, and I watched AJ versus LA Knight, and it's like both those guys look amazing. You can tell that, I mean, and their schedules, these guys are working, man. And they're they're getting in the gym, man. But on top of that, they're dieting their asses off. Like I think Osprey's not fat by any means. He's just not dialed in. He's just not chiseled. You know, he's not AJ.
Mm-hmm.
He's not LA Knight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those guys, like most of the guys, on the WWE roster, look like, you can tell they're putting they're putting the time in the gym. They're dieting. Granted, man, a lot of those guys have got buses and everything else, and they're fucking microwaving meals, and it ain't like the guys on the other side ain't making the same amount of coin.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
get through. If some of you guys that aren't making the same kind of coin, you can still throw for you in a bus, make it a bunk bus like you would a rock and roll band. You can have your meals. You can have somebody else drive you. You can get your sleep. You can get your training in.
There's ways to do it
Yeah,
other
to
than the
compete
bus,
against.
too.
We fucking ate fucking handfuls of pills and shit. It's
Orndorff
very
didn't have a bus in '85,
no.
and he was, he was chiseled. There's ways to do it.
But it's
Yeah,
I
and the
would I
schedule
would
isn't the same either,
no
most,
I would
right?
but I would in no way want to condone anabolic steroid use to somebody that isn't in the TRT category, and that's fucking late 30s, early 40s that you start looking at TRT when your testosterone's down. We can't have 23-year-old kids taking shit.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're gonna have heart attacks. I mean that was the whole reason we had a wellness system. So I mean it's
All right, talking shenanigans said, I'm just glad that KN is able to keep a subjective mindset and not a one-sided WWE Triple H paycheck option. Thanks, Big Kev. So you're critical of WWE when you feel that they're doing something wrong.
I didn't like the killings thing.
Right.
It's just my opinion. Number one, man, it's just my fucking opinion.
Yeah, that's why
That's
people
all it
come
is,
here, though,
man.
for your opinion.
It's just like my vote. The guy woke up next to me on the red eye from Phoenix to Atlanta. He woke up next to me and Morning Joe was on my television screen. You would have thought I was watching Nazi propaganda. He just kind of looked at me and then looked at my tattoo and looked at my hair and was kind of like, wow, I wouldn't picture that this guy
It would be
was,
watch
yeah, we would be watching MSNBC.
MSNBC.
I'm like,
Right.
but and I used to always use the analogy of you can't do a soap opera and have a guy in the back looking at the monitor and watch a guy kissing on his wife and then come in the next scene and go and punch the guy and goes, what's that for? Oh, I was at the monitor watching that scene that was filmed in the back and yeah, I saw you kiss my wife. You can't do that. You have to have distinct lines and parallels.
The fourth wall, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just
Milk Carton wrote
I
in.
just have a feeling that Tony, his booking style would not be considered Sorkin-ish.
How much is he giving them? Like, how?
Stop bringing up Dixie
No, this is why I asked about Dixie, because
because
you said that
she's
she had people doing the wrestling stuff, and she might have just been saying something like, listen, we're selling a ton of Rob Terry merchandise. Can you guys get him involved this week on TV? And then it's up to the wrestling guys. It's up to Dutch to figure out how to get him on TV, right? Like, isn't that the right formula? Boss says, hey, this guy, this guy, this guy, doing well. And then,
if TNA would have had merch.
yeah, they didn't have anything.
Nah, fuck it.
Is Tony involved with the wrestling part of it? I can't imagine, right?
Who do you think? So you think that somebody else booked him taking that pile driver besides
No, he might have
himself?
come down and said, listen, I want to get involved this week. I want to show up
You think
at the
no?
NFL draft.
He was chosen by Meltzer as Booker of the Year 2 years ago. He's the booker.
Okay.
You don't get to be Booker of the Year by fucking having somebody else writing the shit.
Right.
Maybe fucking he needs to stop listening to fucking Mr. Five Stars, because you see where that fucking old momentum, you run down the side of a fucking steep hill, you pick up some momentum, and all of a sudden you hit that fucking flats. All of a sudden you realize, man, you ain't the world's greatest athlete. You're a fucking 5'7", 540 guy.
Right.
That's where they're at right now.
Gotcha. Milk cartons.
Guys are staying over because they know how to get over and how to stay over. Nobody's being made.
Interesting. So it's not like some of the people you worked for that had a very good sense of how to make Kevin popular. This is Kevin's so damn good out there that he's going to be popular no matter what. And those are only the guys that you're going to have that reaction for in AEW, you're saying. Right? The guys that know how to go out
there. They brought back Kenny Omega.
Yes.
On this past show, which I didn't watch, but I heard that he did an interview, and like 99% of the people were asked about it afterwards. I don't know what he said.
Interesting.
Did you get the biggest bang for your buck? And I love Kenny. He's one of my favorite wrestlers.